y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Watch Us Thrive podcast. This is your girlie, Ann. We have a good one today, ladies and gentlemen. I say this every single week, like every guest is amazing, but the gods brought us together. I'm so excited to have this guest because this is going to be a different perspective in regards to domestic violence. You guys know, if you've been around here, I'm a survivor, I'm an advocate. I talk about this shit 24/7, but what we don't talk about enough is the financial aspect that comes with being in these types of really shitty relationships. And we have an expert on the show with her own lived experience of going through really shitty, toxic relationships. She was actually in a marriage. And now she's out here helping the world rebuild after going through really traumatic things and especially rebuilding financially. So, Justine, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Sis, I'm ready.
Yes.
We need to talk about this. We need to talk.
A conversation is going to be had, okay? But I always start off with an intro for people who are meeting you for the first time. Just give a little backstory of who you are and what you do.
Awesome. So my name is Justine. I am based out in Los Angeles, and I am a certified financial educator. I help many, but I really specialize in helping women and domestic violence victims and survivors really reclaim and regain their financial footing, because let's be real, that gets lost in the mix of all the other chaos that's happening when you are a survivor and when you are a victim. And so that's where I stand with that.
I love what you're doing. Our field is so niched. It's such a specific audience to the people that we speak to, but it's so necessary, especially when it comes to the money aspect. Financial abuse is a real thing. You know the stats. I know the stats. 99% of domestic abuse victims experience financial abuse. It wasn't until after me getting out of my own toxic relationship and diving deep into the world of DV that I even heard of the term financial abuse. Like, when being very naive when it came to the world of domestic violence, the only type of abuse that I coincided that world with was someone punching you, someone breaking a bone, you ending up in the hospital. And while that's a very big thing that victims do experience, there's so many other umbrellas that fall under the domestic violence window. And I know you have lived experience. So before I get gems out of you, because, she's a money coach, so I'm going to pull some stuff out of you. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about your own personal journey and what you went through in that relationship, as much or as little as you're comfortable with talking about. But like, when did this happen? What are some things that you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I want to start off by saying that I didn't always stand in my truth. I think domestic violence is something that just comes with so much shame and embarrassment and guilt. You may know what I'm talking about, right? So it took me a very long time to start really opening up and talking about my situation. And there were only a few people that really knew what I was going through. And so I'm going to give you my story, girl. We're going to take it back. So back in 2014, I moved to New York City to get my master's degree. And listen, I had just come back from Istanbul, Turkey. While I was out in Istanbul, the Gezi protests were popping off. So not only was I experiencing civil unrest, but I was still healing from that. And quite frankly, I never took the time to really process what had happened to me and having to live through civil unrest. And what my takeaway from that was, I'm just going to be a strong ass bitch. No one can fuck with me. I'm strong. And I got this type of attitude. But truly, I didn't acknowledge just how much pain and feeling and pains that I had, the feelings that I had, the needs that I needed. And that transferred over to my future relationship. So I want to give that piece right there, because my life was already chaos when I was living in Istanbul. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was choosing between food, rent, and cigarettes. And when you are so stressed the fuck out, you don't think clearly. So you start making all these types of decisions that affect you emotionally, mentally, physically, and financially. So I got to share that. I got to put that on a platter first, because that literally was what I took and brought with me into my future relationships. So fast forward, I mean, when I found out I was moving to New York, everybody was like, oh, that's the concrete jungle. I was like, I just came back from motherfucking Istanbul. I'm ready. Your bitch is ready, you know?
Yes. She was built for this.
Yeah, that's what that was what I was convincing myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get to New York, I start my program, and one night I'm in a local neighborhood bar in Harlem, and these two guys walk in. Me and my girls, we look at them and we're like, oh no, they are not from here. Skinny, tight pants, nice, well done, like hair, looking really suave, right? Like just looking like you ain't from here. You're not from here.
Right.
Long story short, they come and talk to us. And this is kind of where it all starts. But I don't realize it until obviously later down the line. I'm talking to this guy, and he is just ambitious as fuck. That's what I see. I see a man that he came here from Europe. He wants to be a businessman. He's ambitious. He's a go-getter. He's living in another country. Like everything fucking resonated to me. And I think it's because also the people in my life that I was surrounding myself, or the guys that I was involved with prior to this, like they weren't go-getters. So I was just so turned on by that. And at the end of the night, we exchanged phone numbers. And I remember turning to my girlfriend and asking her, like, yo, sis, like, what do you think about this guy? And she was like, I don't know, girl. Red flags. She was like, I don't like how he was excited that the minute you told him you were from Los Angeles, he was excited about that. The moment all these little things he was like grasping on. And basically my girlfriend was like, there's something sus about that. I fell for it. This guy is kind. He's taking me out. He is doing all these things, right? Just to win me over. And then all of a sudden that love bombing starts to happen. And I don't even know what love bombing is. Like my soul is so broken from what happened in Istanbul that I'm blind, girl. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, oh my gosh, this man is this, and that. So I just fall for it. And at some point, I got to put a side note here. This man is working illegally. He doesn't have a visa. So your face right now, girl, we gonna get real right now.
Wow.
Okay. So, yes. So this is a different type of story. We're going to talk about that now. Okay. I wasn't ready to get married. I didn't want to get married, and I was on the fence. And so there was one night that really changed everything. And it was the night that he got arrested. So what ended up happening is on his way to come see me one night, because we were not living together, he jumped the turnstile in New York and he got caught. Like, who the fuck gets caught?
Clearly you're not from here.
Yeah, so he jumps the turnstile. There happens to be an officer there. He gets arrested. And at this point now, after this arrest, eventually they'll let him go a few hours later. But after that night, it was just a constant of, so are we going to get married? Because at the end of the day, he had to show up to court a month later. And so for someone like me, I'm like the nicest person. And at that point in my life, I was willing to do whatever I could for a partner, putting them before myself. This is part of the story here. And it just kept hearing it over and over and over and over again, which then eventually turned into, I was going to see you, and that's why I got arrested. And he was like, if you don't do this, you don't love me, right? That means you don't love me. So just that type of manipulation that is now happening.
How old were you when you were in this relationship, when you met him?
I was 26. So it was just not what I wanted. I literally came back from Istanbul thinking like, okay, I'm going to get my master's. It's time for a new part of my life. Like, I just wanted to live in New York as a grad student, as a single person. And then I met this person And it just spiraled into us eventually getting married. And that was so hard because Leanne, all these things are happening, but the biggest guilt that I felt was that I didn't tell my parents.
When you got married?
No, girl.
Wow.
I know. I don't think you were expecting this part to come out of the story.
I mean, if that's not a red flag, I'm going to let you continue, but like a red flag in the relationship that I was in, I didn't want to introduce him to anyone in my circle. Like he never met my parents. He met my sister, but only in passing. He met my daughter later down the line, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But I never wanted to like bring him around my circle. And being on the other side now, it's like, that is a fucking red flag. If you don't want to introduce your partner to your people, you didn't tell your parents you got married. Like, I need us to like look at these red flags because that's God, universe, whatever you believe in, telling you like, this ain't it. And we know it, but when we're in it, we're like, no, but, making all these justifications and excuses. But like, you didn't tell them that you got married?
Okay, are you ready to hear the rest of that? Because
I don't know. Do I need to like hold on to my seat?
Girl, let me tell you. Okay, side note, we're going to talk about this in a moment. But like, side note, I just told my parents last year.
Wow.
That's how long when I tell you healing is a motherfucking journey, healing is a motherfucking journey.
Yeah.
I had to work through so much, went to therapy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it was a lot. But here's the kicker. When I told him my reservations and telling him I'm scared, I feel bad that I'm not going to tell my family or this, and that, just expressing to him what my feelings were, he just said, you don't have to tell them. Don't tell them now. Tell them once I'm a successful businessman. And this is where my hands are flying. This is where I'm in my head like, oh shit, that makes sense. Oh my God, that makes sense. Like, and my parents came from the Philippines. I was born here in the US, but like, that's a whole different culture, a whole different mindset. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to look way better if they know he's a businessman and that he's established versus them looking at me like, dude, who is this guy?
Right. Just this piece of shit. Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, girl, I went back and forth. I just made every excuse in the book to make this sound fucking right. But I knew in my heart and my soul it wasn't. And I'm so grateful. And if I could give I'm going to give many tips tonight. But one tip is, and they're so good at pulling you away from your circle, keep your circle close. If you have friends that are literally there and they are telling you that there's something wrong with this person, there's something a little off, if he starts to take you away from your circle, sis, pause, stop, just listen to your gut and listen to your circle. And that's one thing I'm so grateful for, is that I had a few girlfriends that knew what was going on. And they just kept telling me like, Justine, I don't know about that. But
so how long were you guys married for?
March 2015. The divorce finalized in 2017 of August. But I left him in November of 2016.
What was that like? Like, you dealt with a lot of shit, and you don't need to go into detail because I don't really like focusing on like, what did he do to you? I don't think that's any of our business. That's your story. That's your perspective. But what was it for you that made you realize this relationship can no longer continue being? And what did it look like for you leaving and finding the power within you to be like, no more, we're not doing this shit anymore?
So I wanted to leave him so badly early on in the relationship, because after we got married, that's when all the behavior started to unpeel. It just started to show. So the way he spoke to me, I was like, man, no one's ever talked to me like this. My father doesn't talk to me like this. The closest men in my life don't talk to me like this. Like, what is wrong with this guy? But I'm also battling the fact that I haven't told my family. So how am I going to get out of this marriage, right? Like,
Right.
how am I going to get this divorce? So it was just things like that. It was started with the mental, right? The manipulation. It started, and then that's when I realized I was like, okay, this is probably going to go south. But of course, I still wanted to try to make it work. And then it was the moment I found out he was cheating that I thought, okay, I get what this guy wanted. So I found out that he was cheating, not just with one person, but with like hundreds of women. And when I confronted, when I say hundreds, that's not an exaggeration, because he left his Facebook open on my laptop one day while I was at work. I was like, why is this in a different language? And then I thought, holy shit. So of course I went in there and I saw it all. But that was the moment I was like, I want a divorce. But he wouldn't, he did not want it. And we fought and fought and fought for, I don't know, almost a year. And then eventually one night while I was cooking dinner, he asked me to help him with something. And, you know, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, like I'm not handling shit well, right? So I just make a snide little remark, and I wish, you know, I don't recommend it, but I say, why don't you have one of your bitches do it?
I'm laughing because I see myself like literally saying the same thing to my ex.
You know, I don't recommend it, but I said it. I said it because you're angry. And next thing you know, I see a knife come flying at me. So he throws a knife at me. And then we get into an altercation where he strangles me. I'm like fighting for my life. And at that moment, I was like, nope, nope, this ain't gonna happen. We're done. This is it. And here's the one thing that I did, Leanne, that I'm so grateful that I did, is that when I found out he cheated on me the first time, the very beginning, that's when I said, okay, I need to get my finances in order. Because let me tell you what ended up happening. My ass was in collections. When you are a sponsor of an immigrant, you are in charge of all that finances. I took my savings that I had, and I put a deposit down. I paid for everything up front, travel costs, moving costs. Like I drained myself financially for this marriage, for this person. And I didn't have the financial literacy to really understand what the fuck I got myself into before getting married. So fast forward to when the incident happened, I had already started saving money because I was like, okay, I've got to find a way to prepare myself. But unfortunately, something where he had to lay hands on me for me to finally say, I'm fucking done, it's unfortunate.
It's part of your story, and I understand it completely because, you know, when I think about my own situation, even though it's very different from what you went through, it took for me to almost die in order for me to wake the fuck up and be like, okay, no, we're not doing this. Like I literally had to escape from my ex because he tried to kill me. He was strangling me, putting knives to me, like just wild shit. The shit that you see in movies, like that was my lived experience. And it took for me to have my come to Jesus moment that I like to say, for me to wake the fuck up and be like, okay, now we're going to start the rebuilding process. So thank you so much for sharing that because I feel so seen. I love having conversations with other survivors because while our stories can be so different, there are so many similarities. It's like these people, the ones who are abusing the victims, it's like the fucking blueprint is the same. Like every single thing, the cheating, the lying, the fucking manipulation, like they all do this shit. And I think when we come together as a collective and we share, hopefully it reaches someone who'll be like, yo, I see a little bit of myself in this story. Let me start to reflect. Let me start to put money away. Let me start creating this safety plan in order for me to one day reach the point that I say no more. And it's in us sharing our stories that we're out here helping people. And I just appreciate you for being so open about your situation because as painful as it was, look at what you're doing now. And that's what I really like to focus on this podcast. Of course, we need to give backstory. We need to talk about the pain that we've gone through, but it's called Watch Us Thrive for a reason, right? So you have been able to turn that pain into your purpose now, and you're a money coach and you're a certified financial educator. I don't want to butcher that. And you decided to start helping women, people of color, victims of abuse, to take back their power over themselves, especially financially. So talk a little bit about like why? Why did you decide to step into this space and start helping people and bring your purpose to the forefront? What did that journey look like?
When I think about why I wanted to become a financial educator, actually, when I got out of that relationship and I moved into this little cottage, and I've like posted on that before, and I started to rebuild my life, I started to also rebuild my finances. Because at this point, I had drained my savings. I was in $10,000 of credit card debt. I was in collections. I got demoted at my job living in the Bay Area, and that shit's expensive living there. So all of this was happening, but there was something about being able to move away and being in that little cottage and knowing that I had saved just enough money to move out after that incident. So I told myself, okay, Justine, if this is something that you can do, that means there are others that can do this. They need a guide, they need help. So I started getting good with money. I started teaching myself. I listened to all the podcasts, I read all the books. And then one day I met a woman who is now my mentor. And she was the one that sold the dream of financial freedom to me. And I will never forget her. And in that moment, that's when I started honing my skills. And I don't work for that company anymore. But I decided after working for them that I took all the positive things that I learned and decided to put that into becoming a financial educator. And it took me a while to figure out who I wanted to serve. Did I want to serve everyone? Because everyone's, we always think like, I just want to serve everyone. But no, after telling my story over and over again, I realized, wait a second, I want to help women, but I particularly want to help domestic violence victims and survivors get good with money, because a lot of them are left with nothing or very little when they leave. So that's what got me into this space.
Yes, snaps for that, claps for you, all the flowers. I just love it. It's such a beautiful thing to witness, and I can see and I can feel the passion that you have behind this, which I think is so important. And for you to really be paving the way and allowing others to see, despite what you've gone through, look at you now, and this can be you too. And I can help you because I do have that lived experience. There's a lot of bullshit out there when it comes to coaching. There's a lot of frauds and people who are just in it for the money or for the clout or for the followers. But when you come across genuine people like Justine, like she's the real deal, y'all. So I really want you to pay attention to what she says and share this episode with anyone that you feel can benefit from it, because like we said in the beginning, there's so many of us who have or are in or are going to be in these types of relationships. And we got to break the cycle. And the way that we do that is by having these conversations. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I do want to touch on the post that you posted today on Instagram. I literally have it right here. Hitting financial rock bottom and then bouncing back stronger than ever. The quote that you put on Instagram is, quote, "You have the capacity for zero." So talk about what that meant to you and what were some strategies that you were able to use in your own journey of rebuilding your financial health after leaving that relationship.
Yes. I literally just got goosebumps, like hearing you read that to me, because it always reminds me of what the fuck I conquered,
Yes.
But having the capacity for zero really means you are willing to start over and rebuild. And that resonates with me so much, not only now, but back then, because when I decided to leave, I knew I was like, okay, I'm going to leave everything in this apartment that I paid for, because you got to drop your ego. I'm going to leave everything that I have in this apartment behind. I really need that $3,000 deposit that I put down on this apartment, but I gotta let that shit go. I've got to be able to look for a new job because I got demoted. It was a whole thing. I've got to find ways to rebuild my safety net. So the narrative that I had told myself is that you've got to be able to start from zero. You have to be able to have that capacity for zero. So I just planted that in my brain. And every time I felt like giving up, I told myself, have the capacity for zero. You are able to restart. You are able to rebuild. This is not the end of your life. This is the end of this chapter, but the beginning of a new life. And so when I did leave, I continued to say that to myself, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be the same person that you were in that relationship, that you were yesterday, that you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 fucking minutes ago. You don't want to be that same person. And if you can understand that things could be gone from you in literally a millisecond, you will have the capacity for zero, because you understand the value of rebuilding and restarting, and that it's okay. You see what I'm saying, sis?
Amen. I mean, we're in fucking church today, ladies and gentlemen, because the gems that you're dropping, like I don't even have words to explain how much I can relate to you. And I think it's so beautiful for you to have that mindset, because it's easy for people to fall victim to their circumstances. You could have gone the completely opposite direction and be like, oh, woe is me. And oh my God, look at my life and feel sorry for myself and all of that. But you decided to be like, no, fuck that. Even if I have to start from ground zero, even if I have to rebuild myself up from nothing, I'm going to do that. And every single person who is listening, whatever your situation looks like, you have that power. That person that you were in a shitty, toxic, abusive relationship, they put that shit in your head that you're nothing without me, and you're not going to do anything in real life if I'm no longer in it. And I need to be in control, and I need to fuck that. Ignore the noise that comes from the outside, even if it's people looking outside of the relationship and throwing their judgments and saying all this shit that's trying to keep you down. No, fuck that. You have the ability within you to change your life. And it's one decision away from you being able to completely shift the narrative that has been fed to you, especially when you're dealing with a shitty relationship like that. You have the power within you, and I want people to realize that, like you said, this is not the be all end all. This is the end of this story, but I'm creating permission within myself to rewrite a new one. And yeah, it's going to take some time. Yeah, it's not rainbows and butterflies. I'm sure that shit was so fucking difficult for you, but you made it out, you made it through, and look at what you're doing now. So give that the permission within yourself to be like, I'm going to fucking rewrite my own story. And I'm going to start over, and start over as many times as I need to. If it doesn't work out the first time, that doesn't need to be like, okay, I'm never going to try ever again. No, just try to do something different, pivot, lean on the support system, because we all have that. Well, I shouldn't say we all. Most of us have support systems that we don't really know about until we actually need to support on them. I'm sure you can relate to that, right? So, yes to everything that you're saying.
And you know what? Let me, I just also want to say this, because as you're writing the next chapter of your life, that motherfucker is gonna try to come in there again. And he's gonna try to put himself as the protagonist. They're gonna insert themselves. But this is what I want y'all to remember, is that at the end of the day, you're the motherfucking author. So you get to decide whether that person is gonna be in the next chapter of your life or not. And whatever, you know what are some things I did? I straight up was like, I am blocking your ass on, I don't know who needs to hear this, but motherfuckers ain't got nothing better to say. They got nothing better to say. There is no fixing. There is no resolving. There is none of that with these type of people. That took so long, because you know what I did? After I left and I was living in that cottage, I still kept that motherfucker's number, and he still called me, still texted me. And it is so hard to become the better version of you, to rewrite your story, if someone keeps tapping you on the motherfucking shoulder and keeps fucking bothering you. So when I tell you to close that chapter. You got to close it. And that means making that hard decision, because for some of us, it is hard. But blocking that person, if you got to put a restraining order on that person, but that's a whole nother story, because truth be told, it is very difficult to go to the police. That may be a different podcast episode, sis, but but if there are things that you can do to prevent this person from entering your life, please take that action. Because
1000%. I mean, for me, I called 911 and he ended up in prison. He's actually getting out of prison in a couple of months, but he's been in prison for what he did to me because I changed the narrative. I spoke up. I told someone what was going on, and I was able to start rebuilding. But it took a lot of me leaning on that support, knowing that I didn't have to go on this journey by myself, and really just taking my power back. So I think that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I want to know from you, because you are a money coach. So, what are some ways that you would share with someone, say they are in the position that you were in? They're rebuilding from rock bottom and they want to try to start the process of not only emotionally healing from this situation, but also financially. So, what are some tips that you can share with the listeners in order to start the process to rebuild themselves back up from nothing?
Absolutely. So, I have what we call a financial safety net. And that financial safety net, I want you to imagine that you've got four corners that pull your financial safety net. Now, the question I'm going to go into this, but the question I want you to ask yourself is that, would you be more willing to jump into a net that you built yourself? Because the truth is, when we give up our financial autonomy, we didn't build that financial safety net. So we don't know how stable, how tight those corners are. Will it be able to catch us? So it's so important, as when you start reclaiming your financial autonomy, your financial independence, you've got to build that net yourself. That's it, bottom line. Because oftentimes what happens to DV victims is many of them don't have any financial control over their money. So as you are rebuilding, I want you to imagine your financial safety net. You've got four corners. The first corner is your money mindset. Identifying what stories, what narratives you are currently telling yourself, and really self-reflecting and figuring out, am I money avoidant? Do I worship money? Right? Those types of, do I even know how to log into my account? Asking yourself those questions and identifying how you view money. Because at the end of the day, your money mindset is going to be that anchor. It's going to be when you start to stray, you're going to have to come back to the mindset that you have and pull yourself back in. So corner number one is identifying what your money mindset is and how you want to change that from a scarcity to an abundant mindset. A nice little trick that I did for myself and I tell my students is using positive self-talk. It sounds like, okay, Justine, is that really it? It works.
It like, works. Really? We got to do positive affirmations? Yeah.
You do. Do you see this face? You do. Okay? Because you do. Because here's the thing. The more you tell yourself you can, you will. Because if you continue to tell yourself, I can't afford this, I can't get this job, I don't have those skills, you're going to live in scarcity. You're going to always live in scarcity. So you've got to find a way to start thinking in abundance. And one simple hack is you just change everything from negative to positive. So something I learned from Tony Robbins was that you've got to speak in the present. And when you speak in the present, use positive self-talk. So I'm not a millionaire yet, but I say I'm a millionaire, right? Or to that effect. Does that make sense? Yes. So getting your money mindset. Once you've got your mindset, you are now confident enough to say, all right, let's take a look now at budgeting. So that's pillar number 2. We got to look at that budget and we've got to see what money do we have coming in? What money do we have coming out? And so again, if you have some sort of income, that's still money that is going into your pocket, hopefully, that you know about, that you are aware about. but then also understanding where your money is going as well. So understanding what that budget is. Once you've established your budget, remember, at the end of the day, when you're creating a budget, your goal is to save money and to pay yourself first. So when you pay yourself first, lots of definitions for it, but essentially when you pay yourself first, you are talking about putting money into a savings account. You are talking about making that minimum payment on your debts that you have, your monthly debt payments, being able to put that money in investing. So paying yourself first before you put that towards any expenses. Once you've got a handle on that, now we've got to pull the next corner of our safety net, and that is debt management. So we've got to be able to understand who do we owe and how much we owe. And this is what I typically share, is that the first step is that you just need to find a way to make the minimum payments. I know people are going to say like, oh, you got to pay more, and you do, but especially for a domestic violence victim and a survivor who is just starting, I'd like to start with the small and focused wins. I don't want to go big, too fast, too high, too far, none of that. I just want to focus on the small wins. I want you to do that because you're building that confidence again. So understanding what debt repayment method is going to be best for you. And then that last and final piece, oh my gosh, I blanked out right now.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm all up in this. Okay, mindset, budget, debt repayment, emergency fund.
There you go. It's okay. Listen, it happens. It's fine.
Okay, so that fourth corner of your financial safety net is going to be your emergency fund. At the end of the day, this emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, I called it my oh shit fund. I kid you not. I called it whatever you're going to name it to help you fill that baby up. You want to do that. And so having an emergency fund and being able to put as little as possible or however much you can every single month, every single paycheck is going to help you in the long run. Because at the end of the day, you want that emergency fund for any type of emergencies. We don't want to keep swiping credit cards. We don't want to keep going into debt. Instead, when an emergency happens, we want to know that we have that cash reserve to land on.
You have that financial safety net, like you said.
Exactly. And that's what I teach, what I coach, especially when you are just starting off. Don't get me wrong. I love investing, but when you're trying to figure out the rest of that's coming later.
Right.
That's coming later.
You got to try and like dig yourself out of the hole, if you will, that you're in. And then you can start building on top of that. But first, like, get good with you. And I love that you started with the mindset, because this shit right here controls everything else around you. The way that you view yourself, the relationship that you attract, how you feel about yourself, like it all starts and ends with you. And it's important for you to look within and be like, yeah, this isn't great right now, but like we said before, we have the permission to change it. And taking it one fucking millisecond at a time, right? Like people say, one day at a time. Take that shit one baby step at a time. And don't focus too much on like the end goal. Yes, eventually you want to get to where it is that you want to get to, but like put in the work day by day. Those small little wins, they will add up to you getting out of the hole and being able to start a different journey, like starting to invest and doing all these other things. But first, like, baby girl, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Like, we got to take the shit one little step at a time and then continue that habit over and over, and you will get there. But your journey is your journey. It takes you however long it takes you. And that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Don't worry about the outside noise, what other people are doing, that comparison trap bullshit. Blinders on, baby girl, and just focus on what it is that you want to do for you in order to start rebuilding, especially, emotionally too. Like, just focus on yourself and everything else will flourish when it gets to be your time to get there.
100%. I always tell people at the end of the day, No one on this earth has ever lived a second of your life, bottom line. And so you just got to do you. Everyone has different circumstances, and you will get there. Just like you said, you will get there when you get there. As long as you put up the work and you show up for yourself, you don't got to show up 100% all the time. It ain't going to happen. But if you just show up, you put in the work, and you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
1000%. I knew this conversation was going to be so good. There's so much more that I want to ask you, but, I just want to know, for you to reflect back on everything that you've gone through, good, bad, and ugly, to the woman that you are today, like, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you're proud of that has come from the shit that you've gone through?
I don't know what to say, because there's so many things that I want to say, because I learned so many lessons. But the biggest lesson, I am so glad I didn't give up on myself. I'm so grateful that I had very few strong women in my life during that time who did not judge me, who loved me, who were there literally through everything and reminded me to be kind to myself. Because when you're in that situation, when you're living in chaos, when you are all sorts of fucked up, it is so easy to talk down on yourself, to shit on yourself, to think that you are absolutely nothing, that you are not worthy, you are not deserving. But to be surrounded by those women who constantly loved me and reminded me, they gave me space to be kind to myself. And when you are kind to yourself, you start to believe in yourself, and then you don't want to give up. I think about it, girl. Whew, I am so glad that Justine did not give up. She didn't wake up one morning and say, like, I'm not doing this shit no more. No. There were mornings. There were mornings like that, dark as fuck, dark. But there was still that little fire within me, still there. And I think the biggest lesson is don't give up, just pivot.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this conversation. I'm so sad. Like, I could literally fucking talk to you all day. This is not going to be the only time that you're going to be on this podcast, because I just fell so deep in love with you, and just seeing who you are despite what you've gone through, like that is what Watch Us Thrive is all about. And I know people are going to want to know more about you, possibly work with you, follow you along on your journey. So please plug it in. What you got cooking up? How can people support you? And any last words that you want to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. So if you are interested in getting more of this content, or just like following the journey, or you need that hype woman, because we all need that accountability hype woman in our life, you can follow me on Instagram at Miss Financial Fitness, or Twitter, Miss Financial Fit. I will drop my information, website, all that stuff with Leanne. And then Leanne, you can go ahead and post that. JustineDePeralta.com is where you can get some free resources that I'm updating and I'm excited about, as well as if you are interested in working together, we can. But one small project I wanted to talk about that is coming into fruition is that my book is coming out in the fall, and it's going to go in more depth of what we talked about today about building that financial safety net. And it's got some great tips and gems on what to do after. So just like recovering emotionally, physically, and also financially.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see that come into fruition. Do you have a title? Yeah. Can you share it?
I'm going to share it. I'm calling it Girl Jump.
Yes.
And it's basically like building your financial safety net so that you could leave that abusive relationship.
Yes. Oh, snaps to that. I am so excited. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Like I said in the beginning, it's so needed in our spaces and the people that we speak to. And you are literally changing lives with your story. I'm so honored to know you. Shout out to, what was her name that introduced us?
Marielle. Yes.
Yes. Shout out to Marielle for bringing this connection together, because it's just so beautiful to witness. I need to see more people of color, more women who look like us to be in these spaces and to just know that, like, despite the ugly shit that you've gone through, you can and you will thrive. And we're here to help you. So please, y'all, support her, follow her, work with her, slide in her DMs. I'm going to link all her info in the show notes for you guys to stalk her. And Justine, thank you so much. I adore you. I can't wait to continue watching you grow and flourish and just do big things, because I know the world is just, it's not ready for what you got cooking up. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Leanne. This was, oh my gosh, just beyond my expectations. And I just want to say that thank you for having this platform and allowing us to share our stories. I think it's important to remember that we are not alone. We are not alone. You are not alone. There is a community of people who have like similar stories that are thriving, and we can all learn from each other. Let's not put each other down. Let's move with empathy. Let's move with compassion, and let's come together as a sisterhood, as a community. And Leanne, you girl, you sis, you fucking doing that.
Stop it. She's making me blush. No. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and we're gonna have to talk some more. We're gonna have to continue to do this.
Yes. Thank you guys. Check you out next time.
Bye.